Content warning. The following video contains fictional depictions of violence that some viewers may find disturbing. This includes repeated graphic descriptions of death, injury, blood, gore, and psychological horror. The story explores disturbing themes of being trapped in an inescapable time loop, endless cycles of death, and unseen sinister forces inflicting creative violence. Discretion is advised for more sensitive viewers. It started out subtle enough that I didn't notice right away. Misplaced keys, tripping on the sidewalk, small things you brush off as absent-mindedness. But then the accidents started getting more bizarre. A terracotta flower pot fell from the clear blue sky and cracked my skull open, choking to death on a single grape that somehow lodged in my windpipe, blocking all air. Every day some new, improbable demise would end my life in creative and unexpected ways, only to wake up the next morning freshly alive again, with only a vague sense of dread lingering at the edges of my consciousness. When the deadly accidents started happening during my normal waking hours, I could no longer deny that something sinister seemed to be stalking me. On Monday morning, I was making breakfast as usual, when my toaster spontaneously combusted into flames that quickly engulfed my body, electrocuting me to a charred, smoldering death. Tuesday, I was walking downstairs when I slipped on a stray banana peel and cracked my skull wide open on the sharp corner of my granite countertop, bleeding out rapidly. Wednesday, I sat down to lunch and choked violently to death on a single salty saltine cracker that somehow lodged firmly in my windpipe at just the wrong angle, completely blocking all air no matter how hard I clutched at my throat. By Thursday morning upon waking, I realized with dawning horror that I was trapped in some kind of recurring loop of impossible, improbable deaths. Each morning I would wake up whole and healthy again in my own bed, only to die some bizarre, unlikely death before the day was over, only to restart the loop the next morning, endlessly repeating. The repetitive nature of this pattern was maddening, but no matter what I tried, I could not prevent my strange demise at the hands of some invisible force. It was like being forced to play out a sadistic video game, where some unseen entity was determined to creatively end my life in a different way each round, despite my best efforts. After nearly 100 deaths, when I was killed by my brand new microwave spontaneously exploding violently and embedding jagged shards of searing glass into all of my vital organs, I finally had to accept that this was no delusion or a psychotic break. I was truly trapped in an endless, repeating loop of death every single day, with no way to escape or prevent my gruesome fate. I even started desperately researching paranormal explanations that could account for my bizarre ordeal. Quantum immortality, vortexes through the space-time continuum, parallel universes, and computer-simulated realities. Anything that could possibly explain this endless Sisyphean cycle of waking to die over and over ad infinitum. But hours spent scouring quantum physics forums and occult subreddits ultimately led me nowhere. No matter how outlandish the theory, I could find no answers to explain my baffling situation. Every single evening I would find myself faced with some violently creative new end, gruesome dismemberment leaving me to slowly bleed out in agony, forced exsanguination as my blood was slowly, steadily drained from my body, being burned alive with the smell of charring flesh filling my nostrils as the crackling flames engulfed me. It seemed like my unseen tormentor was flexing their creative muscles more and more, upping the intensity of my death as if I was the subject of a violent but curious scientific experiment, meant to test how much agony a human mind and body could endure before finally cracking. I tried refusing to leave my bed all day, hoping that not engaging with the world would allow me to finally break the deadly streak I was trapped in. But my merciless killer always found a way, and no matter what I did, faulty wiring hidden in my bedroom walls would spark and set the entire room ablaze, and inescapable clouds of natural gas from unknown leaks would flood my house and suffocate me while I slept. Decayed and rotten floorboards would open sinkholes directly below me that I would fall through helplessly. It was utterly useless to resist or attempt any kind of defense against these deadly forces. They always won in the end, no matter what measures I took to evade them. My friends and family remarked with deep concern about how paranoid, skittish, and panicked I had become over the past few weeks, how I would jump or scream at the slightest unexpected creak or movement. They said I seemed like a terrified feral animal backed into a corner, teeth bared and ready to bite anyone who came too close. And in many ways, I felt like their assessment was accurate. I was like a wild creature trapped in some unfathomably vicious experiment, subjected to unending creative violence and pain just to see how much torment I could experience, before finally succumbing to madness or death permanently. After a few weeks of this never-ending torment, I even tried pathetically to fight back against the pervasive deadly forces that haunted me. I surrounded myself with an arsenal of blades, poisons, handguns, and anything I could get my hands on that could potentially give me even the slightest chance of overpowering whatever unseen entities seemed determined to destroy me in horrific ways each and every day. But invariably, they would exploit the slightest gap in my defenses to turn my own weapons against me in ironic and gruesome ways. A misstep would send my own poisoned dagger embedding directly into my racing heart. My weakened, injured body would be flung from high windows to be dashed against the unforgiving concrete pavement far below. A round from my shotgun would ricochet and rip through my stomach, leaving me to slowly bleed out in screaming agony. I frantically and obsessively racked my brain for some explanation for why I seemed to be the sole target of this endless, repetitive gauntlet of death and suffering. What had I done to deserve this? This inescapable loop of violence inflicted on me over and over by unseen forces or entities that I could neither identify nor comprehend. But no matter how many deaths I experienced, no matter how much I pleaded for answers or mercy, I received nothing in return aside from new creatively horrific ways to die day after day. Immolation, exsanguination, evisceration, vivisection. My tormentors had seemingly endless methods to draw out my suffering in thrilling new ways for their own dark amusement. It was nothing short of a true miracle that my sanity remained intact for as long as it did in the face of the constant violence and trauma I was subjected to on a daily basis. But after hundreds upon hundreds of gruesomely painful deaths, I finally reached my limit when I awoke on what would be my final morning in that place. When I opened my eyes that day, for the first time I did not scream or even gasp in horror. Instead, I simply started laughing aloud, a broken, hollow, mirthless laughter like shards of glass scraping together. Because at that moment, I realized fully that there was simply no hope of escape or reprieve from this endless cycle of suffering and death. I was doomed to die thousands upon thousands of gruesome deaths here at the hands of these unseen entities and forces that remained untouchable and unstoppable to me. So now when I awake each morning in this accursed realm, I no longer fight against the inevitable grisly death that the day will certainly bring. I simply wait calmly, with almost bored resignation, for whatever end my tormentors have chosen for me that day. When the knife is driven hilt deep into my throat, when the noose is pulled taut around my neck, when the poison paralyzes my lungs, I do not struggle or cry out anymore. What would be the point? My resurrection every morning is inevitable here in this place, no matter what I do to resist. Sometimes I even try to take a small amount of comfort in the novelty and creativity of the sadistic demises they come up with. What outlandish end will they force upon me next? Will I finally die an ordinary, mundane death like slipping on wet tiles and fatally cracking my skull open? Or will these sinister otherworldly forces continue to somehow reach deeper into their bag of horrific tricks to top themselves each time they kill me? But this particular morning when I first drifted awake, I immediately felt that something was different somehow. Before I even opened my eyes, I sensed a subtle shift in the very air around me. The atmosphere felt lighter, less oppressively heavy and foreboding than usual. Some previously diminished instinct buried within me seemed to whisper that perhaps this day would finally be my salvation, the key to ending this endless nightmare I was trapped in once and for all. I could not stop an ironic, choked laugh from escaping my throat aloud at that thought, that vague hope. Surely my merciless tormentors did not need to bother with exerting their horrific creativity and powers upon me today. I would save them the trouble and effort by graciously ending my own life this time, escaping their clutches forevermore. As I sit here now, calmly staring down at the large bottle of powerful sleeping pills and sedatives that I have slowly and secretly managed to amass and hoard over countless weeks and deaths, I feel nothing but an overwhelming sense of relief wash over me. My fingers do not tremble or hesitate as I methodically open the bottle and pour pile after pile of the tiny capsules into my cupped hand. I know that swallowing the entirety of this toxic mix of drugs will grant me the endless permanent oblivion of death that I have so craved. No matter what gruesome plans my sadistic makers have for me today, none can touch me now. I am beyond their reach at last. I willingly and gratefully go to greet the endless void of non-existence ahead, forever freed from my merciless fate at the hands of my captors. This final death today, I have chosen entirely for myself.